meantime, welcome back to Gaming Garbage. So today we're going to be talking about RedFall. And I already know a lot of stuff has already come out about RedFall. It's already been going and stuff. And, but we've finally been getting some behind the scenes of actually what's going on and why. Perfect. Audio sounds pretty good too. And yeah, why it was such a mess. So we'll kind of do a little bit of a backdrop, and then we'll work through some of the data. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I'm getting better at that. But ultimately, so RedFall was made by Arcane Austin, and ZeniMax was in control. And Bethesda ZeniMax was in control of this, and Microsoft had more hands off. They were just letting them do their own thing, and this was not necessarily the first time that they had done a multiplayer game. There was Deathloop, which was a multiplayer aspect, and that should have been the first indication that changes were coming, and kind of their direction and what type of games they were going to be making. But we get RedFall, and it is just absolute garbage. And we even get some gameplay footage from like IGN, which was like 20-30 minutes, and it just looks horrible. Like the person playing the game, it just looks super boring. The AI does not look enticing at all whatsoever. And the person's just kind of running around and it looks really bad. Also, there wasn't a ton of preview copies, and that was kind of an issue. And then two, there was the embargo was so close to the actual launch date, and RedFall was also having to be delayed. So all of these things put together, it's like, man, this is really not looking good. And I feel bad for the people. I mean, there were thousands just on Xbox, tens of thousands probably, just on Xbox that bought it, even though it was going to be coming to Game Pass on the first day. And, of course, not everyone has that. But two, that's been an indication lately that if the game isn't really doing very well, or it's not expected to do well, it's usually on Game Pass day one. Now, if it's an exclusive for Xbox, that makes sense, because if they basically own the studio that's making the game, and of course they own their own platform, it's probably going to be on Game Pass, right? They're not necessarily going to lose a ton of sales that way. Plus, it's a way to kind of bolster up Xbox Game Pass. But something we see too is just games have been out for a few weeks, or maybe a month, or maybe max a couple of months. And if they really don't do that well, they kind of show up on Game Pass. And it's a way for studios, third-party studios, to get some extra money in their pocket if it's not necessarily going too well. And it's more interesting and different content for also Game Pass. But RedFall was such a disaster. And there was an investigative journalist, I can't remember his name, but if you want to look at Yang Yeah or Mr. Matty Plays, they do a great job of kind of breaking down exactly what's happened, and the investigative journalist's article on what he was finding out. And he heard from about 12 different people from the company that used to work there or were still currently working there because of disclosure agreements. No names are used. But we find out that, the studio was in turmoil for quite a long time. So this is what we found out. The studio itself had been working on this since 2018. The studio, for the first 3 years, was designing the game to be a live service game. So there was going to be cosmetics, maybe different weapons, maybe some little things. I mean, you get the idea. Just microtransactions with a store and all of this extra stuff, right? Well, 3 years in, they scrapped that idea, so that would have been 2021. And in 2020, we had lockdowns, pretty much for that whole entire year. We had COVID. Stuff was messed up. People didn't have to work in some areas because, they were paid to stay home. Also, there was a whole extra thing with sick leave on the state and federal level. Yeah, it was such a mess. And I still think we don't even entirely understand how influential lockdowns and COVID were, not just for the country, but for the entire world, on how it really messed up stuff. So yeah, in 2021, they scrapped the live service aspect and kept some aspects, but it was no longer technically a live service. It was going to be published as a game, as a product, and consumers were going to consume that. And that was kind of their idea, with having a roadmap too of what the future content was going to be, like DLCs and that kind of thing. Something else that we learned was people at Austin really had no idea what they were doing, because the leadership was flipping back and forth between, you should make the game like Far Cry, or you should make it more like this, or throwing in some other games. And so instead of actually pulling from a blueprint of what the game is supposed to be like, how it's supposed to be engineered from the ground up, the devs were basically given, hey, the game should kind of look and play like this. And we've been hearing that, for quite a while now. As things are leaked out through insiders, as things are disclosed from people that have been fired from different studios, we're starting to hear that there's kind of this easier way of dictating kind of what the goals are. Instead of being precise and specific, they're just more generalities of what the game should be like and how the devs should design and make the game. So another example that comes to mind that was really bad was Anthem. And Anthem, as we found out, had been in development for years. They had changed some stuff, but it was like 18 or 20 months before launch. And that's when they finally figured out, oh, we're supposed to make the game like this. And so they were in a mad rush for that period of time to just try to finish the game, put it together. They were going to delay some aspects of it and put those aspects and features in later. And when Anthem launched, it was just so broken. And you could even see it in the demo. And I personally played that demo, and I told a couple of people at my place of work at the time, hey, I don't think you want to buy this. I would sit and wait because it's a lot of money. It was $60 back then. The super fancy COVID edition was like $80 or $100. And yeah, it was an absolute disaster. And it was a total waste of money, unfortunately. And within a year, they basically killed the game. It wasn't even worth having. And so, unfortunately, this is what happened to RedFall. We had a lack of vision, a lack of ownership and vision for the game itself and what it was supposed to be like and how they were supposed to design it. And then not only was it cheap to design it after a franchise that had existed already, they were being told about multiple franchises, and it's like, okay, what aspects of those franchises, like Far Cry, do you want to be a part of the game? And exactly how are we going to implement that? So there really wasn't a lot of understanding on what they were supposed to make. In the meantime, Microsoft, even Spencer came out and said in an interview about a week after RedFall had come out and said, yeah, we were pretty hands-off with the studio. They had made some great games like Dishonored and Prey, and there's some really good IPs through that. And they were just really hands-off. But this was really the first kind of big game that Austin had made that was going to be multiplayer. And we saw too with Fallout 76, but from Bethesda, that here Bethesda had made plenty of games in Fallout that were all single player. The story, the characters, the interesting events, the 100+ hours of gameplay. For some of us, 200-300 hours. For some of us, we've even gone back a third or fourth time and played it again, right? Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 in New Vegas. And, these games were wonderful. We enjoyed them. And here, Fallout 76 was going to be a multiplayer game. And again, they were removing the NPCs. And we've heard, too, that, again, they didn't really know what they were making. And Fallout 76 was a total disaster. I mean, that was just one of the most depressing launches I've ever played. It was just like, wow. 10 hours in, you can just tell this sucks. This isn't the same. It's a whole bunch of robots and a bunch of bugs, and just some things were interesting, but it's like, man, there is some massive changes needed here. And initially, Bethesda didn't want to do it. They said they weren't going to change. They weren't going to put NPCs in. But ultimately, that's what people wanted, and that's ultimately what they did. But it was way too late of a change. And Fallout 76 is just another game on a list of just dead-on arrival titles. There's still some people that played it. You can still have fun with these titles. But Redfall is going to be another one of those games. We found out, too, that, competitively, from a business standpoint, employees weren't really being treated that well and also weren't being paid that much as the industry standard. And so, coupled with that, with the working environment and complaints that have existed in the past, and then along with a studio that's used to making single-player games and switching over to a multiplayer, by the time Redfall was completed and launched, 70% of the studio had quit. That is unreal. I have never heard of so many people quitting a studio during the development of a single video game. That is crazy. And so, in the meantime, they had to outsource a lot of the project to other companies. And so you have all of these different companies not really having the right idea of what the game is even supposed to be, and trying to push it all together like some screwed up, soggy puzzle where all the pieces just they're not really congruent, they don't form and fit together, and yeah, you just get some kind of mushed together piece of Play-Doh like Redfall. And you can even see in the gameplay, you don't even have to play it. You can see in the gameplay that the AI isn't good. There's a ton of bugs, there's glitches, there's crashes. There's no character development for the characters. The overall gameplay is kind of repetitive and boring. There's a repetitive quests. The big bosses in the game are easy. I've even watched some people where they've been playing the boss and they're like, wait, that was the boss? Are you serious? That's a joke. Some of the mid-tier, like, mini-bosses are even harder than the main bosses in the game. Could you imagine if Elden Ring or Dark Souls was like that? Oh my word. That would be horrible. Or like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Or Destiny, right? Even though I'm not a fan of Destiny anymore. Still, if the raids and the bosses were easy to kill, then just some of the tougher normal enemies, that would be really bad. Of course. So, yeah, Redfall was a total mess. They were probably over budget. We don't know that necessarily. That's an assumption that I'm making. But they were probably over budget because here we had a studio that really didn't want to make the game, that was frustrated with the direction, or rather no direction, that the game had. For a long time, they were completely scrapping out an entire live service aspect of the game with the last 2 years of development, and were just kind of left to themselves. And the outsourcing to multiple third parties of this project wouldn't have been cheap, since there was a time crunch. And then still, you had to fill and try to hire for these positions that were now vacant during the development of Redfall. And we know they had a skeletal crew for a while. And COVID and lockdowns and all this other stuff, that didn't help either. Something that I've mentioned before, and I'll say again, is I've had no one else mention this, and I don't necessarily expect it because normally economics and video games don't go together. But I think as live service and NFT craze and all of this continues to be pushed through the main 5 or 6 companies in the gaming space, I think having a base level understanding of macroeconomics and business model and what capitalism is and how companies view the bottom line, I think it helps. And one of the things that happened during COVID and the year after, so 2020 and 2021, is we had 75 million people retire from the workforce in the United States. At the time, that was half of the workforce. And that is insane. I mean, having half of the workforce retire within 2 years, that's a ton. That's never happened before. On average, it's normal to have anywhere from 8 to 12 million people retire in any given year. And in 2020, we had about 22 million. And then in 2021, we had about 43 million people. And that blows my mind. And of course, that's across all sectors in the labor force in the United States. But one of those sectors being gaming. I mean, gaming is well over $100 billion a year total. And it's a huge industry. And it pulls in a lot of money from the consumer base in the discretionary field. But yeah, that also is a part of it. So not only was Austin having issues understanding exactly what they were making, they were having some people retire because they were just tired of the BS with vaccinations and masks in the workplace and 6-foot distance. I mean, I know of some people that quit their jobs. I know of some people that moved to different states. And, even I myself, I was getting ready to move. My family and I, we were getting ready to move to another state if need be. Yeah, better for worse, that didn't happen. And here we still are, and I'm still working my job. But, yeah, some people are willing to make the hard decisions so that they can choose to live how they want. So remember that, folks. Someday you're going to be working. Maybe you already are. Maybe someday you're going to get out of a dead-end job and get into an industry or a career field. That's really up to you, by the way. And maybe some of you are actually going to run a business someday. And remember that, some people, they are willing to go to drastic measures to live how they wish. And they are not willing to forego certain things. And, your workforce dictates part of that. So you got to pay attention and you got to listen to them. And that's something, too, in the industry that we haven't seen. But, this blows my mind with RedFall. I mean, there are so many aspects of the puzzle here where it's there's little teeny things where you can look back in articles or things that we see or, even the trailers of certain games or demos where it's this doesn't smell right. Something is going on. And it isn't until later after the launch where we just find out all of these issues. And I mean, no wonder they didn't really want preview copies to really be out there, and why the embargo release was so close to the launch date, and also why they delayed the game. Because remember, this game was supposed to be out in 2022, or at the beginning of 2023, and it came out on May 1st. And it's already a dead game. I mean, we're a month out, and it's already done. Austin should just scrap the project and just move on to something else. Don't burn your time trying to save a game when it's already fallen and going downhill. It's really hard to stop that momentum. And yeah, if a game is failing or has already failed, it's just time to give up. And folks, I gotta mention this again. We have got to vote with our money. If the studios and the heads of the studios, and if the gaming industry, those five or six big companies, if they're going to listen and and improve the quality of the gaming space, we have to vote with our money. And so start voting with your cash. And right now, it's the best time to vote with your cash. During recession, when things are going to be tight anyway, bottom lines are going to be shifted, margins are going to disappear. For companies, right now is the best time to actually push for a better gaming industry, because we can apply the most pain to these companies. And I feel bad for, the workers that pour their heart and soul into stuff. And then it just gets trashed, or it's not something they want, or like the game is just an absolute piece of junk. You don't walk there and be like, yeah, I worked on RedFall. Oh my word, could you imagine the amount of hate and stuff right on the street and death threats and whatever to those employees? Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. And two, we're seeing cutbacks in companies and studios, and I don't think this issue is necessarily going to go away, but I do think we need to apply pressure. So if you're not doing that already, don't buy the launch. Don't pre-order. Don't get the bonuses for pre-ordering. Wait to see reviews. The folks that have big channels, the embargoes when they're lifted, when people are able to, chat about a pre-owned copy or a preview copy that they had. Wait for those to come out and then make the decision. Because, even though I'm making the most money I've ever made, I still feel pretty broke. I feel like, 2 or 3 wrong steps and my family and I are in serious trouble. And so I can't just willy-nilly blow cash on games that aren't going to be worth my time. And then two, if you feel like you got screwed, you should always ask for a refund. See if you can get one. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but you'll never get a refund if you never try. So let me know what you guys think about Redfall. Have you guys played it? Have any of you played it at all? What are your thoughts on it? Do you have any information to add? What have you guys heard? Leave it in the comments. Let me know. And because, I don't see this as just me doing a channel to just solely entertain you guys. What I want to do is actually create kind of a community and create a space where people that wish to can engage and chat. And the ability to do that is there. And I think it'd be cool if you guys could actually do that. But more than anything, folks, use your money well. And this is going to be one video out of a few where I'm going to be talking about something kind of specific in the gaming industry with recent events that have been happening in the gaming space. And I think it's important to talk about these because these are some of the underlying mechanical issues that we don't really like in the gaming industry. So keep an ear out for a few more. They'll be coming out, quote-unquote, relatively soon. Of course, I'll be doing them when I have time. And anything could happen tomorrow. But this is a huge reason why Redfall was the state in which it's in and why it was such a failure. If you guys are enjoying the channel, go ahead and give me a follow, all that jazz. I'm on Twitch, and I'm also on YouTube. YouTube is Gaming Garbage 22, and then Don't Tread on Twitch. I don't have any other social media platforms. That is it. It's just those two. Maybe eventually I'll get like a Twitter or something, but I'm going to wait till I get a lot bigger than I am now. So, if you enjoy it, go ahead and give me a like and a follow for all that algorithmic stuff and how it all works. And I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. You guys made it. If you're still working like some of us do, man, hang in there. Your weekend is coming. It is coming. And folks, too, if you got some extra money, just set it aside. Have a little bit of a couch cushion. Because I do think this recession is going to be rough. I am kind of thinking, I know it's not for everybody, and I understand this is a gaming channel, but economics affects everybody, including the companies that design our games. And I'm debating of whether I should make a little video on talking about some of the latest economic data and kind of where it shows the economy heading. And it's very fugly, folks. It is very fugly. So, with that, I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see y'all on the next one.